Welcome, everybody. My name is Benjamin Poole, head trader at Verified Investing. In this video, we're going to be covering commodities, and these are the commodity futures. I'm going to be covering gold, silver, platinum, palladium, and live cattle. And again, these are all futures charts that I'm going to cover with you guys. Let's go ahead and jump into the first one, and that's going to be on the price action of gold. So here's what I want you to notice. Upsloping trend line. You got to connect this pivot low here, secondary hit, third hit, fourth hit, fifth hit. Finally, we had a breakdown. So this price action hasn't retraced this scene of the crime. So what I'm waiting for is price of gold to head all the way back up to 5,024 on this price action on this gold futures contract. So this is where I'd institute a potential short opportunity on GC1. So this would be where I would enter a short trade, or if I was long, this is where I'd exit, knowing that this was a retrace to the scene of the crime. Not only is this a retrace to scene of the crime, if you notice all the way over here is a lot of support in this area. I do think eventually, now this is a long-term play, would eventually go down to about $3,500 on the price action of the futures of gold. You got this pivot top here, secondary hit, third hit, and no real retrace after this breakout. So I think eventually GC1 does come and retest that $3,500 level. But right now, as you can see, we're clearly moving up. And so we have to respect that uptrend until it's broken. So how do we identify a potential downtrend? So we've got this pivot top here, secondary pivot here. So how do we know if futures contract on the price action of gold is going to continue higher? Well, first off, we need to recapture this upsloping trend line. And then we need to recapture, that would be this $5,024 level. And then we need to recapture the upper end of this downsloping trend line. So as you can see, as we get closer and closer to the apex of this triangle right in this area, we're getting into additional resistance levels on the GC1 chart. And so that's why I do anticipate a nice significant rollover. Third hits oftentimes get rejections if you're coming from the underside. So here would be the first hit, second hit, third hit, ton of resistance in this area, retrace this into the crime. This should be a ton of resistance and should drive the price action down. And I do think that we could come all the way down to about 4,562 on the chart of GC1. So once that does break, then I think we're going to come back and retest these pivot lows right here, about 42.22. And then ultimately, again, this is more of a long-term outlook, would be 3,500. If this downsloping trend line does break to the upside, though, and we can recapture this upsloping trend line, then all of a sudden we have we can open the door to it coming back up to about $5,500 and then up to 56 or even higher towards that $6,000 level on GC1. All right, let's go into platinum. Platinum has similar price action. You get pivot top here, pivot low here, secondary hit, third hit. You notice how the third hit of this trend line was a lot of support. After we hit this support level on this upsloping trend line, as well as all of this price consolidation on platinum, you had this nice bid to the upside. So here's what we're looking for on the price action of gold. This is PL1. First hit, second hit, third hit, a little bit of a rejection. And then all of a sudden we got above it and confirmed. Now what I'm waiting for me to go long would be this retrace either to this upsloping trend line here or a retrace to this downsloping trend line. Because as you can see, we did break out, but we never came back in and retested a retrace to this broken trend line. And that's oftentimes what happens on these charts. And so if we can do that, this would be a long play for me, knowing I've got a stop out level at any close below this this upsloping trend line on a daily closing basis. But with this confirmation of this downsloping trend line breakout and this support level right here, this again would be my buying opportunity, knowing that I've got an upside resistance level at 2407. And that's where I would exit the trade if I was able to get into this level at this point. On the upside, you are into a lot of resistance right now. So I do think that it favors more of a pullback. 2172, as you can see, all of this price consolidation was a ton of support and or resistance. And so now that we're below it again, we're into a lot of resistance. Next level of resistance is going to be this red bar candle here. All this price consolidation in this area. And then this would be my max upside on Palladium, PL1 for me before a bigger rollover And it will have to wait and see where price action heads to and how quickly it goes up into this area. The quicker it goes up into the area, the harder the fall it's going to be on platinum. So let's go ahead and go into silver. Silver chart. These two, platinum and silver, have a pretty similar charts. You get first hit, second hit, third hit. The only difference is this upswing trend line goes back a little bit further. But look at what happened. You got this nice support area right here, as well as all this price consolidation. Now it did bust through this first level of support and got all the way down to this low pivot area right here, this prior gap in the charts, sitting right here at 61,080 before this pretty significant bounce. I do think eventually we're coming back down into this pivot top area right around $54. But right now we're still in an uptrend off of this bounce. And the reason I say that is because you've got this pivot top here, secondary hit, third hit, fourth hit, finally broke out. We actually broke out, never confirmed, but we retraced this in the crime, and now we're heading higher. On the upside, 87,020. This is going to be your first level of resistance that silver gets into. If you can bust through that level, you don't have a ton of resistance above it. You do have this prior gap in the charts that didn't really act as support or resistance. So my next level is going to be this green bar candle here. But really what I'm looking at is all of these people who were buying in this candle before this big move to the downside. They're stuck in this trade. And if I were in this, I would be down 37%. So once you got back up into this level, 56% move to the down, to the upside, this is where I'm jumping ship. This is where I'm exiting the trade, right below the $100 whole round number. That's where I think that we're going to have a pretty significant pullback again on the chart of silver or SL1. For me, I'm a buyer again if it gets back into this upsloping trend line. Even though this is already hit for the fourth time, I've got additional support at this level at 65,085, and then this low pivot area at 61,080. Even though I think that eventually we're coming down into about 53,235, there are some support levels that I wouldn't mind dollar cost averaging into silver, especially after we made this nice push to the upside. So if we do get a little bit of a rebound into these levels, then I think we should have a nice support going higher. All right, let's go ahead and go into palladium. Palladium, I've got a couple different resistance levels. So here's this pivot low here, secondary hit. Well, really, this is the second hit, third hit, fourth hit, fifth hit, sixth hit. Notice how strong this support level was before it eventually broke. We did get a little bit of a retrace to this upsloping trend line after it broke, but now we're starting to make this V-shaped recovery. What's capping the price action at the moment is this downsloping trend line right here. As you can see, we're consolidating right underneath it. This is giving way for the bears to step out of the way and allow the bulls to target my upside resistance level, which would be about 1763. And it really depends on when it hits this upsloping trend line. So this trend line hit can move along with the price action, because that's just how trend lines work. As the price continues to go day by day, this upsloping trend line hit is going to get further and further away. This is still going to be my resistance level, and this would be a retrace to the scene of the crime after we can break above this downsloping trend line, though. If you're more of a bull and you think that palladium has a lot further upside, what you want to do is, if you're already long, you want to wait for this downsloping trend line to break confirmation, and that can give you more an idea of where the upside target could go. Now, if we fail to break this downsloping trend line and you're looking at dollar cost average, about 1454 is going to be a gap in the charts. And then really your line in the sand, if you start breaking below 1349, that is an area to kind of get out of the trade. And then if you zoom out in the charts, your next level of major support is going to be right in this area at about 1095. This is where I would start picking up palladium for a long-term hold on this chart based on what I'm seeing right now. Also, if you notice, you got a shoulder, funky head, possible shoulder. Could send palladium down pretty far. If this measured move did play out, it would be a pretty brutal sell-off in palladium. I don't see that necessarily happening, but it doesn't matter what I think it's going to happen. It's really the charts that are going to dictate what really ultimately happens. All right, last but not least, live cattle. I put on a tweet that if price action got above 250, this is where I would start shorting it, knowing that it could go up to as high as 252 or even 261,150. These are the levels that I think that live cattle, or LE1, is starting to get way overextended. If you turn on the relative strength index, as you can see, we're piercing above the 70. And that was a pretty good run from the lows of the 30 all the way up. Got a little bit of pullback. RSI did drop below the 30, below 40. Buyers bid it back up, and then all of a sudden shot up to the 70. So that's a pretty good move from 228 all the way up to about 251 or 252. So I think ultimately what's going to happen is the RSI is going to come back in. And then if this gets back down to about 43 to 42, all the way down to 40, that's where I'd exit a short trade on this, on the chart of LE. Now, if it does decide it wants to head up above 70, again, that means likely price action is heading up to 260,150, and that's where I'd average into the trade. And the reason I have that level is look at this upswing trend line. Got a pivot top here, secondary hit, third hit, fourth hit. Do you see how many times that this upswing trend line gets respected and gets a pullback? This gives me further confidence that if we do get up into this area, then that is where a pullback is likely to happen. So that's my analysis on all 5 of those different commodities. Thank you so much for joining me this morning, or this afternoon or evening. If you guys are getting something out of this, please make sure you're liking, you're following, subscribing, and sharing with those friends. Even if they're not futures traders, maybe there's some information in here that they were looking to get into another stock or an ETF that's related to some of these, and it could give them insight into their potential trade. So anyway, that's what I have for you guys. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next time in the charts. You guys have a great rest of your day. Take care.